Next speaker it will be Eric Gaffet. It's director of CNRS, director of Institute for Research on Nanoscience, Electronic Materials, Surfaces and Metallurgy, but also it's the member of Scientific Committee for Consumer Safety. No, it's the word that I refer that we must combine. So, Eric, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. So, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to speak about nanosolution for sustainable materials management. I apologize for coming so late this morning, but I wake up at 2 o'clock in France, so it is 1 hour here. Just because the director of the Institute, Jean Lamour, is very large occupation. Here is an outline of my presentation. First of all, I will spend some time to precise the context of this field of critical raw materials and what could be interesting to find some solution by nanomaterials or nanotechnology. And so here are the set, just the first slide to introduce the subject. Just to illustrate the fact that you have many applications of rare materials or rare metals. And so regarding these various applications, you have many policy goals, report, and what is first, I don't think that you will see anything at the end of this room, but what is important here is, you have a, no, maybe, is the list here of critical material, yeah, on the right column here. And you see that as a function of the country or the continent, you have a list which can be short or very long, and we'll come back later on this. And the materials involved in this list will be maybe different. So regarding, and in the context, you have also many financial support for projects at European level, for example, but also at various countries worldwide. And so you will see that it is important if you want to improve something in this field by nanomaterials or nanotechnology to define the materials you wish to want to work on. And the first criterion, which has been very important in the beginning of 2010, 2011, is the price. Just to illustrate this, you have this increase in the price of the materials here, collected by US people here, but you have also other ones. It is not just a single increase, but you have also fluctuation. In some cases, you may find explanation, as for the lithium in the bottom left of this slide, but in other cases, it's a little bit more difficult because it is only, in some cases, speculation. And what is so important is that the increase, which in 2011 seems to have no end, has finished for some materials, by just illustrated by this slide. But even if it goes down, here you have a factor of 5 compared to the price in 2007. So it is something which is a very large increase of the price, but less at least than 30 to 40 for cerium and lanthanum, for example. So another solution or another approach is to find or to know where these materials are located and to which they will be used. And if these use are very important for some country or for the economic development, and you have now many reports. I just give it to illustrate it. And in the case, what has to be proven or to state is the fact that these materials are not so rare that it can be claimed in some report. But this is also a question of this repartition on the world Earth. And in some country which do not play always the time common regulation or regular regulation. And so, but in any case, if you look at the reserves in each country, which is the third column of this, you will find that there is not only one country which have all the materials in the world. It is globally well reported, and so it is another question regarding the criticity of these materials. And in some cases, there is another feature. It is indicated by the red arrow here, because in 2001, the US, considering that the price of their rare earth material is too low, has closed their unit production, and it has been improved and increased, it is now reopened. So if you have some such large fluctuation of production site, you will have also a repercussion on the price of the materials, and we do not drive anything. And so the criticity is also depending on this feature. So I will jump this, and also I have too many slides for the 30 minutes. So another parameter is to compare the origin or the reserves of given materials and the country who support the delivery of a given materials. And here you have the example of magnesite on the upper slide and on the tungsten for the lower side. And so you see that even if China, for example, has a larger reserve for tungsten in the world, it is not so large furniture for Europe compared to the initial reserves. So, if you want to establish a list of critical raw materials, it is a large work, and various experts work on this, and many people also. And so in 2010, there are, at European level, 14 critical raw materials which has been determined by various criteria. And after this list has been revised in 2014, and it will go from 14 to 20, and it has been again revised 3 years later, and now we are with 27 critical raw materials among 54 materials. That means that at least now, if you take this list, which has just been published in September, you have half of the materials which are to be considered as critical. It's a state of publication. And so, so now you have many publications on the way in order to establish the criticity of the materials, more sophisticated than the other one. And what is feature is new appearing is the environmental implication of the exploitation of the ground, but also in the recycling of such critical raw materials. And so if you want, it is a difficult job to define priority. If you want to work on some materials, it is better to know if this criticity will not evolve the next year, because if you engage program, it is for 10 years at least, and so it's and so you have also more complicated, and you get to the question of this paper published in 2017, sense or nonsense on the criticality of raw materials. Nevertheless, you have the question is not only dealing in Europe, but also in other world. Here, just illustrate some example for the Japan. The list of criticity is not in itself self-coherent, because it depends on the application you would like to apply. So here, for example, you have the energy sector. It is a publication from US energy government. And so you have in red the more critical materials analyzed in 2015. But if you consider for the same application, energy sector, the material you have to need, that means if you consider the imported fraction of the materials, you will see that the materials which are just in low level of criticity considering just the energy sector become in high level if you consider the importance of the importation. For example, for manganese here, which is in low level for just considering the energy sector, which became important if you consider the imported. And so the same rule or the same principle can be applied to the circular economy, considering the possibility to recycle some materials. And you have also another list. And the materials we are of high priority here are not the same as a critical one defined by other report. So you have also something which is particular because it is not just a question of list, it is also a question of priority. And so also in US, but also in Europe, you have people who are working on the level of criticity of these materials. And so you have revised list every time. And here you have one which has been published in 2015. And just to illustrate it, you have the former one by the same commission, 2011, and compared to the one in 2015. And so you will see that there is an increase of the priority level for some materials, that's the red arrow, and some of the ones are clearly decline in the blue arrow. And so they move from a high criticity level to relatively low criticity level, even if they remain in the list. But that means that you have a very large fluctuation on the critical list, and this list is different from the Japan one, for example. You will not see exactly the same materials and the same level of criticity. More than that, if you want to see now the same study but at short-term level, that means 5 years, to mid-term level, that's the two slides, the two figures at the top of the slide, left and right, and you will see that the comparison of these both short and long term will move the criticity of some materials. Indium, for example, in short term is high level, but if you consider it at mid-term, it becomes relatively medium level. And you have lithium, for example, who is short term, not considered in this study for energy in the context of US very critical, becomes relatively critical. So you have a very large fluctuation. You have not stabilization of the critical raw material. So if you want just to compare or to apply by nano solution to some materials, it is difficult to drive some research in this context. And more than that, not only you have the fluctuation of the price, the fluctuation of the importation, the fluctuation of the production depending on the context of some countries, but you have also some countries who have a very large force in the future. And for example, here you have Chinese investment in the other industry worldwide. So you have, you can find that there is a large improvement or increase of investment in the world in various other mining outside of China. Here you have also spot here compared to 2004 up to 2010. So you have also some pressure clearly from some countries to control the production of some materials outside of their own country. And it is not the same rule for all the countries. It is not the same rule for European community, for example, but here it is clearly a large tendency for this country. So I will just jump this one because we have no time to spend relatively to this, but I will leave the slide. So if you want to see now nanomaterials and nanotechnology to the various fields, it is illustrated by this, and I will just illustrated by mobile, for example, application. And so you have here some materials which have been used, which are considered generally attention relatively rare. And so you have for screen, electronics, casing, and battery, some various materials. And if you consider this, some of these are relatively rare. If you have also application in the field of energy, you will see that there are also other preoccupation and also interest of these nanomaterials. And you have a large report from Genesis, which is a European report, which is managed every time to refine the properties. Here in the field of clean energy, you have a list on the left side of this table of critical material depending on the solar cell, wind turbine, vehicles, and lighting application. And you have so, as I mentioned at the beginning, as a function of the application you would like to push in advance in the table, you will see that you do not need the same materials. And so it is very important to analyze the nano solution as a function of the field you would like to enforce. So here, for example, you have a wind turbine for which we have something like 600 kilograms per megawatt, or up to from 400 up to 600 kilogram of neodymium per megawatt. That is very enormous, and you are supposed to manage it. And here you have also application in the field of automotive, where there are many now motors, which are magnet motors, and it is at least 2 kilograms per vehicle of magnet materials for all the motors which has been implemented in this model of car. So here, for example, you have also application in the photovoltaic cells, and there are many reports who have calculated the fraction of the rare materials which have been used. Here for tellurium, it is 43 tons per gigawatt. Gallium, it's 4 tons per gigawatt also, and for indium, it is 16 tons per gigawatt. So you have the value at a certain date because the technology is evolving very rapidly, so they have a better optimization of the material and the process. But in 2010, here you have such calculation. And if you compare, all the materials and the chain of introduction of these materials, you reach another level of criticity, which lead, for example, to this critical raw material list in 2014 that I have mentioned before for Europe. One point, because it is, you have not so many reports on this, but in the sustainable agriculture, nanoparticle has also interest because they can be used as vectorization process to optimize the contact between some active product and the plant, and so leading to a less consumption of materials and so less impact surrounding the plant. And so it is also, there is now a large interest and use of these nanomaterials for some application in agriculture. So one way to decrease the fraction of raw materials which can be used and has been considered as critical is substitution. And so you have also for many years in some countries, here is for Japan, which has started before some ones, a list and objective of reduction up to 80%, for example, for terbium and europium, and up to dysprosium 30%. And so you have challenge. And as a function of this challenge or policy, you have a financially research program involved in this country to reach such objective. I just spend on this. And so, for example, what has been released is that the development of materials has taken, in some cases, several years. Here it says the evolution of magnet material in Japan since the last 100 years. And so you see that if you want to move something or to change something, you have to take into account such a context. That means that you have you have to prove really that you have a solution, a pertinent solution, because 1 century of investment in research and in industry is difficult to perturb by a new process or new materials. And if you have no clear reference of criticity of the materials and established list of, it is also very perturbing for so well-established field, because you have no reference and you have fluctuation in the objective you are supposed to reach. So here, for example, in the development of a magnet based on neodymium, you have the evolution of and the introduction of various phases at the nanoscale, which lead for the same materials, at least, to improvement of the magnetic properties, and also improvement in the quantity of the materials which have been used. And here, for example, you have the improvement of the application for motor application of these such materials due to the improvement of these characteristics. And so, if you want to introduce at a nanoscale level dysprosium, for example, you will increase the corrosive force, and so you will improve the variability of application of these materials. I will jump to. So, but as I've seen, it is just incremental substitution. But in some cases, and it's here that the nanomaterial can play a role, it can take its place, is to substitute clearly and not to use massive materials as homogeneous, but to work, for example, as is illustrated here, as core shell materials. Using materials which are not so rare in this field. Just to illustrate the materials. And as I mentioned, and here, for example, you have also all the materials which are called rare-free hard magnetic compounds based on iron platinum, cobalt platinum, manganese bismuth, manganese aluminum, zirconium, cobalt, and so on. Exhibiting some magnetic properties which are interesting compared to the base materials on neodymium. But as I said before, it is also a long story. If it starts in the year 16, for replacement of these rare materials. And so based on this, you can also change not only the materials, but the concept of the dispositive you will use. And here you have also a change of using another materials, and so it's just to show you that there is a various curiosity in this field, and imagination has taken place to introduce new materials based on the nanoscale. So it is also applied, for example, in the case of storage battery, which lithium has been substituted. The cobalt here, you go from 100% of cobalt up to 0. Here, maintaining capacity of storage, which is still interesting. In the field of catalysis, you have also new materials. I just want to show this. If you want to substitute palladium and working at the nanoscale level, if you mix rhodium and silver, you will get the same properties in terms of catalysis that palladium. And you have also many other substitutions like this. You have also full substitution of metal or rare earths by a nanotube of carbon, which may be functionalized. And so you can get the same heterogeneous catalysis, for example. Here it's a simple one, but you have also other ones. For this, for example, And you have a comparison on the side between the metal-free and the metal catalysis materials, and you see that the performance are the same. But the question is still to develop it at the industrial level. It is another challenge also. And for the TV screen, replacement of indium also by nanotube of carbon has been checked. In the field of mechanical properties, you have seen just before a nice picture of the car. I will just use it also. If you work at the nanoscale level, you will strongly improve the mechanical properties of materials. It is represented here. You improve the strength and the formability of the same materials. That means that you can use lower materials for a certain capacity of mechanical resistance, and you can use also it for a new form, new shape, due to the improvement of formability. And so you have various kind of industrial materials. NanoSteel company has developed one in US. Steel Corporation also in Japan, Nanoeton, for example. And so you have to, here is application in the field of aluminum and nanotube of carbon by a German company. And such new materials with higher improvement of capacity will be used to produce new car, decreasing the weight of materials that is used. And you will see each color correspond to a specific materials. That means that you have a gradient of properties depending on the functionality you will have to apply. But the question is also to introduce it as a recycling materials. It is not just materials. You have also to compare it. 5 minutes? Oh. Okay, I will jump to this one. And I have 4 slides. Okay. But the question is also, if you want to get the full life cycle of materials, is to introduce the recycling, and which is the core in urban mine. And here, for example, you have the content of various waste, electronic waste, and so on, batteries, pen catalysis, and so on, and you will have the content. And so you have also the list, the price of on the right side, the function of the source of the materials. So what you see is that for some materials it is in weight%, but for the one it is in ppm. So you have a decrease, you have a strong challenge, and you have also various reports evaluating the strategy to recycle these materials and to get more opportunity on some specific materials, or the one integrating also the environmental effect of the recycle process, because in some cases you use some solvents which are not so nice for environment, and so you have also to recycle this solvent. But so everything is calculated and foreseen, and you have here, for example, some critical table. And so also you have here from Europe criticity in recycling of materials. And in 2011, recycling of our materials was only 1%. Now you have many countries who have tried to develop something, who are developing something, and I've just to illustrate it by a Japan company, Dowa Holding, and here they manage 300 tons per day, and they are able to catch 150 grams of our materials. That means 0.015% of the total mass is recovered. It has to be compared to the global content of our materials in waste, that means 2%. And so you have a ratio of 1 to 10 up to 1 to 150. And there is another problem, because if you use nanomaterials, as it is now very used for mobile and computer, for example, the rarer materials do represent only 0.1% of the weight of these materials. So it is, instead of just using 300 tons of materials, you are foreseen to work on 3,000 tons of materials to get the same percentage of recovery. So, but in some cases it will be useful. Here you have the example of battery. for which up to 80% of our raw materials have been recovered. So in some cases, as I'm beginning on this, it may be a challenge to recover some critical materials. In other ones, it is more easier. And you have the example here applying for Japan in 2013, up to 18%. And just to conclude and to spend time, I will stop here and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. Since we are late, we have time only for a short question, if there is.
You gave a very dense talk. I could not pick up all the informations, but concerning nanomaterials, I'm not referring to nanomaterials as such, but I'm referring to nanoparticles. There are some very serious issues in terms of toxicity, which were 10 years ago, people were saying, no, this is not relevant. But today we are having more and more studies and reports saying that these, I'm talking not nanomaterials, I'm talking nanoparticles, that these particles may be seriously damaging to human health.
Okay.
What do you think about this?
Okay, just to complete my presentation, I am a member of the Scientific Committee on Consumer Safety, and my specialty is nanomaterials also, and relationship in terms of toxicity and ecotoxicity. So, first of all, you have an alternative instead of using single isolated nanoparticles, and that's what I do in my research work. We use micrometric particles, which are nanostructure particles. And if you want to apply a safety process, a filter, for example, or anything, it is classical ones. You have just managed micrometric particles, and there is no major problem to do this. They are a confirmed process and so on. But if you use these nanostructure materials, you maintain the same reactivity. If you want to, for example, sintering, and I have paper on this, you can decrease by 400 to 1500 degrees C the temperature for full sintering of materials compared to the large structural particle one. And if you want to use, in terms of catalysis, you have also the same behavior. You maintain on the surface the specific properties of nanostructure. And if you have better than this, because you have also improvement by a factor of 10 to 10, up to 10 to 20 of the diffusivity of external material atoms to inside this particle. So you can improve also the storage of exchange foreign atoms. And so in the case, for example, of storage of light materials, it may be interesting. And that is used, for example, in the example I have shown on the aluminum and carbon nanotube. They do not use isolated nanotube. The process is just introducing nanotube in the matrix of aluminum by milling, for example. It is used for this. Or the process, it is not a difficulty. And so the question, even if you have still question on the safety of isolated nanoparticles, but it is not a general rule. You have to precise because you have larger particles which may be more toxic than smaller ones. So it is not just a general rule that smaller are toxicer than the larger. You have to substitute with larger particles, it's maybe possible. For example, mechanical alloying is a suitable method, or you have also cold rolling. You have also surface treatment by ion or electron and so on. Or, for example, also laser, which has been used something like 30 years ago. So the challenge is not the safety in himself, it's just to find the solution, technical solution, to produce the same in bulk.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you. Please join me to thank Eric for the lecture.